Hey there, this is Dr. Mort Orman, and today I'm going to continue our discussion on cognitive biases that I started earlier in the week. And I'm going to talk about three uh, cognitive biases that sort of fit together or are related. Of course, as I mentioned in the previous video, there's many types of cognitive biases that we can fall prey to that can distort our perception of reality and lead us to draw poor conclusions or otherwise get into trouble and therefore contribute to stress. So the three that I'm going to talk about today are number one, what's called the availability bias, number two, what's called the availability cascade, and number three, what's called the bandwagon effect. And these are three related biases because they all have to do with how information is presented to us and how that can affect the way we think and feel and believe. So the availability bias, very simply, is just, it's described as the tendency or a bias that we have to exaggerate the probability of some future event based on the information that's most recently presented to us, and particularly if that information is very emotionally charged. So if you see something in the media or you see something on the internet and it's most recent and it's horrifying, or it's like the tragedy that we had in Orlando recently, with the terrorist killings there in the Pulse nightclub. You can sometimes, because of the recency and the sheer emotional power, that you can sometimes tend to anticipate or exaggerate the probability of future events because of the recency of that information. And then the availability cascade has to do with the fact that the more somebody, particularly someone in authority, repeats something over and over again, more frequently they repeat it, the more we tend to have a bias towards believing it. Doesn't matter whether what they're saying is true or not. If they're saying it with confidence, if they're saying it repeatedly, and it gets presented to us through the media, through the internet, whatever, we tend to believe it. And, there's this famous quote that's attributed to Lincoln that people don't know if he actually said it, about how you can't really fool all the people. You can fool some people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. And there was a counter quote from one of the America's premier film producers, Joseph E. Levine, who actually said, you can fool all the people all the time if the advertising is right and the budget is big enough. And that again plays into this bias that we have for the availability cascade, where if we hear the same thing over and over again, we might tend to believe it. And by the way, this is something you'll see in the political campaigns this year, if you've already seen it, and it will just continue more and more, people repeating the same slogans, the same rhetoric, assuming that the more we hear it from whatever channels we receive it from, the more we'll tend to believe it, whether it's true or not. And then the bandwagon effect, most people have heard of. That's just the tendency to believe certain things because everybody around you is believing it. And that's a pretty well-known one. So the thing about all three of these bandwagon effects, again, has to do with how information gets presented to us and how that can affect what we believe. And don't be mistaken, these biases are well-known. There are lots of people, particularly in the media and in advertising, that are aware that this is how we tend to think. And so they will intentionally try to take advantage of these situations and these biases to try to make us believe and feel certain things. And you'll probably see that. I'm sure you've seen that already in a lot of different instances. So I just wanted to start talking about cognitive biases by sharing these three. These are kind of easy ones to recognize and understand. And as we go along in this series, we'll get into a little more subtle ones and a little more difficult ones. But again, these can all be very powerful and can affect us in many ways, some positive, some negative. Talk to you next time.